Good morning, Olga. How are you doing? Hey, John.
Hey, how we doing, Charles?
Good.
Got your email, and I'm inspired to try figure drawing.
Okay. That was kind of the idea.
Good.
So yeah, we were kind of hoping that everybody would get a little inspired by that and want to try it. If nothing else, even even using that in drawings of like your landscapes and things like that, just trying to look for those bigger kind of movements and
Yeah, right. And like you said, in placement on the page and things like that as well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of useful for that.
Definitely. Thank you.
And just trying to get people to think about drawing a little bit differently.
Yes.
Because, generally what happens is when people start drawing, they kind of start at the eyeball.
Right.
The eyelashes, and then they kind of build out from there. And then they wonder why the figure kind of falls off the bottom of the page, right?
Right. And there's no room for the feet.
Right. Yes. So, yeah, you discover, gee, I think I need a much bigger piece of paper here.
Right. Or a smaller drawing.
Yeah. So it's a little different approach. Yeah.
Very good. Thanks.
So anyhow, okay. Happy Monday, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Okay.
Doing okay.
Ah, there's a familiar face. How you doing, Martin?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
Good. All right.
Where are the rest of the lady that I know?
I'm sorry, what?
Rest of the lady that I know, like Marty and Diana and.
Diana was showing up for a little while. I don't know where she's been lately, but Marty, I can't seem to get a hold of her for whatever reason. I had an email address for her, and it doesn't seem to be working. So anyway, is everybody okay? Anybody got anything going on?
Yeah.
I'm fine, just fat.
Good.
Hey, Armand. Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
So is everybody's refrigerator becoming their best friend?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
Is that what you're
Gained
telling
a little weight.
Yes. I find myself cooking every day.
Yeah. Well,
Not
that's
good.
well, actually, that's good for actually cooking for yourself. I think a good percentage of the world is relying on what is it, Grubhub, or is it DoorDash or something like that? These food delivery services. A lot of people are getting a lot of pizzas and wings and chicken and stuff like that. So anyhow, yeah, try to eat well,
Yes.
and stay healthy. That's important. Okay.
I'm tired of the healthy food.
You're tired of the healthy food? Okay.
But I find I still love peanut butter and jelly. I still love it.
Oh yeah,
Best sandwich in the world.
yeah. Peanut butter and jelly is great. Yeah, I and this may not have a lot to do with painting, but since we're not really talking about painting today, we're talking about things that inspire you. Food could be one of those things. I've always found food really inspiring. And actually, one of my very favorite things to eat is a cucumber, and put a little cucumber and tomato, on a sandwich, and just make like a vegetarian sandwich. It's really good. So
I like tomato sandwiches. I don't need any meat.
yeah,
Tomatoes, lettuce, everything on there, but no meat. It's just delicious.
yeah. I usually try to put a little bit of cheese on mine. Of various types. And actually, one of the things I found that worked really well is you take if you don't like cheese and you don't want like a lot of extra like fat, or you're a vegetarian, you don't want to eat animal products, you can take an avocado and you can mash it up and kind of use that in place. of a cheese, and it's really quite tasty, you know. So
How about the onion and tomato?
yeah, I mean,
That's good.
yeah, the avocado just makes everything stick together really nicely, so it doesn't go sliding around on you. That's
Well, I can never find good tasting tomatoes.
really, you know, I've had a lot of luck with that. If you know, I shop at either Kroger or Publix, and if you buy those tomatoes that are on the vine, that are grown hydroponically,
Right.
Campari.
yeah, most of those actually taste like a tomato.
But they do.
Yeah, yeah, it's the other ones, like the heirlooms, things like, they look good because they've been gassed to be red, or pink, but they don't have any taste to them. So
Correct.
So the ones on the vine, I kind of find to be, you know, pretty
Am
tasty.
I in the wrong place? Is this the art show or the cooking show?
Well, we're talking about things that inspire us, Larry, and
You're
food,
listening in on somebody else's, you know.
yeah, and food may be one of those things that inspire you. Armando was saying how you know he's become best friends with his refrigerator. So since you, I guess, are coming in late on this, but anyhow,
Sorry.
I've got some things to share with you. I'd say I have an artist to share with you, and he's new to me. I haven't, you know, I had not really been familiar with him, and I came across his work. And the interesting thing is he's quite alive, and he's still doing work today. And he started off as a fine artist, and he moved into doing illustration, and he's doing very, very well as an illustrator, particularly for like children's books, things like that. And he's a guy in Russia, and I'll try not to butcher his name too badly, but it's Nitskiev. Anyway, he, you know, I'll try to post something with his name actually spelled for you here in a little while. But I want to show you. Pardon?
I don't know, big letters on his sign and show it on screen.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I will a little bit later. But yeah, let's start by looking at his work. Larry will probably really love this because one of this artist's favorite subjects is mermaids. I happen to like mermaids as well. You know, there's something about that whole mythology of mermaids. But he does some amazing work. And the thing is, all of his paintings are done in acrylic. All right. So this is all acrylic paint, you know, on like traditional either panels, boards, canvases, things like that. And what I really like is his sense of light, how he uses value, you know, light and shadow. And he gets he gets a really interesting effect. It kind of reminds me, even though the subject is totally different, a little bit of like a Caravaggio painting. And so it's that really strong, almost chiaroscuro feeling, you know, to his work. So I'm just going to kind of thumb through these, and there's quite a few of them. But as you can see, you know, as he layers on the paint, you know, he's using the acrylic paint and he's building it up, and it's fairly thick. So it feels a lot like oil paint. But, okay, Linda's saying she can't get into the Zoom thing. How come? Huh.
Very colorful.
Yeah. Yeah, really beautiful stuff.
It brightened up a room.
Mm-hmm.
Still has that sparkly look to it, you know?
Yeah, and the thing is, he's not using metallic colors. It's really all mixed, you know, with just primary, secondary colors. But he gets it's something in the contrast, you know, and there's control of values that really give it that really luminescent feel to it.
Mm.
And just really beautiful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's gorgeous.
And if you look at areas like up here in the hair, you know, he really uses the brushwork, you know, and brings out, you know, sort of the texture of the hair, you know, and then like, look at the flowers, you know, really nice sense of form in those. Again, using light and shadow to really, you know, distinguish, you know, that it's not just a flat shape. It really does feel sort of round and cup-like with those. So again, you know, just really beautiful handling of the paint and color and value.
Wow.
I like the movement of the hair like it's in water.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Very, very, very nice.
Yeah, he really does pull off, you know, that whole sense. And even like, if you look at the skin on the back here
Yeah.
and the play of the light, you know, kind of playing across her form, again, you know, it's just another element. It's pretty subtle, but it gives you this sense that the actual figure has volume to it. So, but yeah, he has lots and lots of mermaids. Yeah.
They're all mermaids.
Well, not all. Okay. I mean, so far what you've seen is all.
Right.
I mean, all redheads.
Yeah, well, until you get to her, and she's got green hair. So, and the thing is, and notice, it's like you'll see some of these compositions and he'll do them, but he'll change the color range slightly. So it's almost like he does series of these things. And then just make slight modifications or changes, you know, between painting. And, you know, most of these, I saw a couple of photos where he was working in a studio on a couple of these pieces. And they're probably like 20 by 30, you know, size-wise. You know, so they're kind of, they're not like really big, but they're kind of in that medium range. Yeah, this piece in particular, now he's got these lanterns, right? And you definitely get the sense that they're lit up on the inside. And then look how he's used this kind of blue violet, you know, at the top of this. And yet it still looks illuminated, right? The same thing with this, you know, kind of turquoise color here. So he's really playing with his color, you know, and pushing it to sort of extremes. And it makes a really interesting painting.
Makes it glow.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really got this nice sense of there's light almost emanating from these, which is not an easy thing to do, by the way. No. All right. Now I know I'm going to run out of mermaids here in just a minute. Because, I mean, he's got a ton of them. But he also, as I was saying, here, let's get on down here. He also, you know, started doing like book illustrations for children's books in particular. And, you know, it's like he has the ability, I think, to envision things in like a really fanciful way. And Linda's still turning. I cannot connect the Zoom. Okay. Anyway, I may have to send her an email link here in a minute. So another mermaid, but yeah. So this is more like the children's book illustrations. And this is, you know, more than likely it's probably just a detail out of a section of a painting. But look at how he's layering the paint. And it's really quite thick, and it's really, you know, very direct. And again, you know, this is acrylic. So, and he's using enough acrylic on that surface so that when he puts it down and he's working an area, he can really go back in and he can put color, you know, back into the paint while it's still wet and model it almost like it's an oil. So he has to be working on these in kind of like really small sections at a time, particularly when it gets into like the focal point, the detail areas, because he, you know, he's got this nice contrast between the very direct looking paint surface. And then when he gets to the focal point, you know, it becomes very kind of smooth and rendered. So he's really kind of planned these out very nicely.
Charles, it looks as if he's using puff paint, acrylic puff.
Puff paint?
Yes, it puffs up a little bit and helps give you the little grainy surface.
Okay. Yeah. Now I've never used anything that I've ever heard of called puff paint before.
But it puffs up just as in the little ridges as you see, just like oil paint. It has the same texture.
Yeah. Now, a lot of what you can do is you can take acrylic paint and you can add a medium to it, like a gel medium, like a heavy gel, and get that effect. You know, because the gel stops the acrylic from flattening out when it dries. Do you paint a lot in acrylic?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yes. And it looks as if so I've got a granular sand grained acrylic paint that you can buy. That when you're making a beach type scene or sandy scene, and it really gives you that oil-like texture. The acrylic puff paint is in little tubes, and you use it as if you're using regular acrylic paint, and you're brushing it on, and it stays the same texture as if you were working in oils.
Okay. So when you put it on, does it appear to be like oil paint and just stays that way, or does it actually?
It has the same, you can position it as if you're trying to make, like in this rose, a little ridge that defines that three-dimensional effect.
Okay. Yeah. So this, like this still life right here, if you look at the flowers, you know, it appears like he's got a lot of paint on there. You know, almost like it was done with a palette knife in oil. But from, like everything I've read about him so far, you know, this is all acrylic. Yeah. Now I really like, you know, pieces like this, and we've talked about in some of the painting classes that I was teaching at Benson about using what we call broken paint passages or open paint passages, right? And so you can see pretty clearly here where he's put down a layer of like a yellow ochre or some kind of warmer color in the background. And then he's worked back over that surface with this blue. And yet he's left, you know, gaps, you know, all throughout the painting here with that, you know, brown color showing through. And it's a nice way of optically creating color by layering it like that. And that's a fairly contemporary 20th century approach to painting. A lot of artists use a technique that they call scumbling. This to me looks like it's probably some brush work, but I think it's mainly like palette knife where he went back over and he kind of scraped and worked, you know, back over the surface again. But just, you know, really nice use, again, you know, of like contrasting colors. Again, this is like one of his book illustrations. And, you know, very imaginative, you know, very colorful. You know, in many ways, it's kind of soft and kind of appealing to, you know, I think children, you know, with the color and texture. Saw a little girl earlier, you know, and so I guess this is the little boy to that series. Now, another still life. And again, you know, look at the way that he kind of structured the flowers. And flowers, by the way, are not easy.
No, they're not.
For anybody who's ever tried to paint them. In fact, I think that flowers, for me, are probably far more difficult than, you know, painting figures or faces even. You know, a lot of times trying to paint a still life and trying to capture, you know, the kind of the structure of the flower and still make it feel soft is really difficult. Again, for me, some people do it really well, but, you know, in looking at like these flowers, you know, I've seen flowers painted in oil, and, you know, he's, again, you know, he's working in acrylic. So a lot of this stuff feels very direct, but, you know, and I don't want to be terribly critical, you know, of what he's doing here. But these seem to be a little kind of harsh and kind of hard and not really that soft.
I like the way he does his vase with the water in it, how clear and soft that is in comparison to the harshness of the flowers.
Right, yeah.
That,
and just the contrast of color. Yeah. I mean, you know, he was very, very meticulous about, you know, getting, you know, really direct compliments. You know, those real strong kind of orangey reds against the blue greens, and then the kind of pinks and softer reds against that yellow green. So yeah, it's almost completely a direct compliment painting. And again, you know, another probably book illustration. And, you know, when I look at areas, you know, like right in this area where he's got all of the kind of gold color and stuff, it really reminds me, not in style, but, you know, just in the color ranges, things like that, of Klimt's work, Gustav Klimt. So, let's see. Yeah, really striking, you know, contrast between the warm colors in the background and how you kind of lose the figure into that background, and the hair. He's come in there with a really strong bluish color, much darker value. And again, this is probably not the whole painting. This is probably just a detail of an area. Yeah, more flowers. I don't, you know, mainly what he started off doing was mermaids. And he's kind of moved into doing these harlequins. And again, you know, really fascinating paintings, really interesting use of color, texture. Definitely, you know, well-versed in painting figures, and, you know, he's got a really good sense of form and weight, and using its value contrast to create, you know, this sense of volume. angel in a park, with all the gold leaves. Again, kind of reminds me of a Klimt type painting. More flowers.
The difference in these flowers and the roses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these seem to be softer to me,
Right.
and they feel a little more kind of natural and feel more like they've got some round volume, to the whole flower arrangement.
And the water in the vases with the water just fascinates me. That's very difficult for me. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, a book illustration. Now, from what I've read about him, he's been very, very successful. Particularly in, like I said, doing book illustrations. He's become a very popular artist. But he's taken his book illustrations and his mermaids, things like that, and he's doing very well in what we would call a print market, right? So a lot of his artwork gets basically turned into prints, and then he's selling worldwide. Just selling these art prints.
For a lot of money too.
Pardon?
They're going for a lot of money. Even the Jacqueline is going for a lot of money.
Yeah.
Doing Jacqueline also. Jacqueline, I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. Now again, you could paint water, and you could paint it all blue, but look at all the different colors, in the actual water itself. And you've got several different slight changes in value, but also in temperature, from a blue to kind of a turquoise or blue-green, a lot of violet, reds. There's just about any color that, any of the primary secondaries, they're pretty much so all there.
Does it remind you of Monet?
This one does, yeah. Yeah. I actually like this better, than some of the Monets. The color just seems to be much stronger, much more intense.
Well, he's about 100 years after Monet, right?
Yeah, he's still alive today.
So he can get better paint, right?
Better paint?
Yeah, for Monet. Monet have to make their own, didn't they?
No. Monet, no. They were making Winsor Newton, and a lot of these paint companies like Grumbacher were making paint at that time. And the Impressionists, one of the things that really made Impressionism possible was the fact that artists weren't tied to their studio anymore making their own paint. It was the Italians back in the 1600s that actually started, putting paint into these lead tubes so they could take it outside so that they could begin to paint outside of the studio. And from really about the 1700s forward, a lot of artists stopped making their own paint and, could buy it, Now, was it easy to get? No. But, you could still get it. And you wouldn't have to spend all of that time, making your own paint. Now, Vermeer, I think Vermeer was in the 1500s. Yeah. And really right around about that 16th, 17th century, boundary is when a lot of artists stopped making their own paint because, again, they could make it and then store it in a tube. So you wouldn't have to go up to the studio every day and make your paint fresh and then use that amount of paint for that day. And then the next morning, go up and make more. And And that vastly improved the quality of the paintings, in the sense that if somebody else was making the paint, they could make large batches of it and make it more uniform and more consistent. And that was one of the big advantages for like Winsor Newton. You know, they were very meticulous about their recipes. And when they made paint or batches of paint, you know, they followed that recipe, you know, really consistently. And even today, if you go out and you buy a tube of paint from Winsor Newton, and you buy one this year, and 10 years from now, you go out and you buy that same color, you're going to, you know, basically get the exact same color, and it's not going to shift from one tube to another. Some of the paint companies, like Gamlin, and some of the smaller paint companies that are making these handcrafted paints now, one of the issues that they're running into is that you can buy a tube of raw umber from them, you know, today, and then a couple of months go out and buy a tube of raw umber, and you compare the two together, and there's a slight difference, again, because they're making smaller batches of paint, and I don't think they have the quality control that somebody like Grumbach or Winsor Newton has. And Winsor Newton's kind of an interesting story all unto itself. You know, they started making paint back in the 1700s in England, and they really do pride themselves on being really accurate, you know, with their recipes, and when they make paint, having it be really consistent. So.
Charles.
Yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
Was the model he used his daughter or someone? The faces all seem to resemble each other.
Yeah, I really don't know. Yeah, I don't know. You know, I mean, I didn't read anything about that, but yeah, she definitely, you know, has a look. They do change a little bit, but yeah, he's definitely got a particular look to his mermaids. And whether he's still doing them or not, I really don't know. He may have done them. I think they were done earlier. And that's kind of what launched his career, got people interested in his work. And he sort of expanded it out from there. You know, these are pretty, you know, amazing, fantastical little paintings. So again. Makes you want to go paint with acrylic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that to me looks just like an oil painting. I mean, it really does. So, and it's got to be done probably with a palette knife. You know, a lot of it has to be done. All right, we got about 6 minutes left here. Yeah, interesting statement, you know, all the pigs. Makes you, you know, it's a bit of a maybe political statement there. I don't know, you know.
What is he saying?
Yeah.
What's going on at that time?
Yeah, I guess he doesn't think much of the justice system, you know.
No.
But now, here's one of the things I wanted to talk about, and particularly like in this painting. Look at the drapery. And then look at the shadows, you know, like particularly like under the waist and under the breast areas, you know, moving down the legs. And, you know, how he's really used value, but not only value, temperature too, you know, to begin to get the roundness in the form. You know, he started off a much darker kind of yellowish color, and then he's moved into this gray, which is a little bit on the violet side, you know, on the underside of the breast to really kind of throw it into shadow. But that contrast in temperature as well really helps kind of complete that illusion and really turn that form. you know, and make, you know, that area feel rounded. The same thing really here, kind of in the leg, moving across, and here in the waist, you know, as that fabric folds down, you know, the shadows, you know, along the seam here where these folds are.
You think you put all the dark in first and then just start highlighting all the lighter parts and let some of it in shadow?
Yeah, I'm, you know, I'm pretty sure that he uses a fairly, you know, traditional approach where he's putting down his darker values and building toward the lights.
That picture says to me, we will have equal justice when pigs fly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate interpretation. Yeah.
That could work.
Yeah, like I said, it didn't seem to be a favorable statement on the justice system, you know, wherever he is. Now,
Well, he's a Russian, so I don't know.
Well, he came from Russia. I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know that he's in Russia anymore. He may be here in the United States.
Yes.
And I'm kind of guessing he probably is, just because of a lot of the book illustrations that he's doing, things like that. I'm guessing he's probably got to be somewhere, probably around New York, you know, somewhere in the Northeast. That seems to be where most of the large book publishers are, you know, like in Boston, areas like that. There used to be a lot of book publishers in like LA and San Francisco, but most of those I think have kind of come back east again. I used to work for a publisher, Harcourt Brace, and they were in San Francisco for a good number of years, and now they've relocated, and now they're down in Florida, not far from Disney, and so it's like the whole publishing industry has kind of shrank and gotten smaller. But yeah, another really beautiful piece. And there's, yeah, two of his mermaids. Now this piece in particular, and you know, I showed you this painting before, but it was cropped and it was just like the upper half of this. But the thing that really impressed me when I saw this was the reflection in the water. And, you know, how he really got, you know, the feeling of the water moving and shimmering. It was really, really nicely done. So, you know, a beautiful effect. So, anyhow, so I'm going to stop sharing his stuff. Okay. Wow, we got a whole 20 people here.
Just a little bit of information about him. I looked him up on Google.
Yeah.
And he's now living in Maryland. He was in Washington, D.C. for a while, and now he's living in Maryland.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So not, you know, a commuter train away from New York.
Right.
Probably not a bad idea. So, okay. Now, when we come back this afternoon, some people have sent things in. If you have things that you want to share, you know, please go ahead and email them to me, and I'll try to download them and get them in the queue, okay? And we'll talk about them this afternoon. So I've got Veronica sent in a piece that I need to talk about. Søren sent in a piece. Wanda Lee sent in a couple of pieces for me to talk about. I've got a couple of pieces by Linda Randolph that I wanted to show you guys. And then Linda sent in some pieces as well. And then I really want to get around, a lady sent in some work. It was a poured painting. She sent it in to me, I think it was Friday, or maybe it was like Thursday that I got it. And, you know, I wanted to show you that and talk a little bit about it. So we got some things to talk about this afternoon. But like I said, if you haven't sent me anything, you know, feel free.
Hey, Carl?
Yes.
Can we get a session on the old masters that we always refer to? every time you mention them, they're familiar in my head, but I don't